Welcome to another edition of the Day After Podcast. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Well, mighty Joe, Texas Tech wrapped the regular season in resounding fashion by just smoking West Virginia 52-15 at the Jones. On many levels, it was a complete victory, perhaps the best performance of the season. And they finished with the 8-4 record overall, 6-3 in the Big 12, which you may have the stat. So many stats been going over since last night. I get confused, but bottom line is it's been a while since Tech has done that well in conference, and it's been at least since 2009 since they won 8 regular season games. So, I guess what was your overall reaction to the performance yesterday, and then to the season?
Yeah, well, it was an extremely good night. I don't think too many people saw a 37-point win over West Virginia. Tech was favored by 3.5, something like that. And that seemed about right. And, of course, the way the game started out, it looked like it was going to be kind of a knockdown drag-out because Tech was able to drive the ball down the field quite a bit, had a couple of nice drives, been stalled out down inside around the 5-yard line, had to kick a couple of field goals. West Virginia had some success early on. They didn't score touchdowns or anything, but they did move the ball a little bit and wound up hitting a field goal, 52-yarder. So it was like 6-3 at the end of the first quarter. Looked like it was going to be a pretty tight game. And then, man, boy, that second quarter, that was
29-0. I think
29-0 quarter.
Yeah.
That was all she wrote, man. I mean, the game was over at halftime. And so many people have been crying for, can we please just have one Texas Tech game where we're not all bouncing off the walls?
Having a heart attack.
The Red Fox Fred Sanford thing going on. So everybody got their wish. And it was something of a relief. Extremely impressive performance. They came back off of that win over Oklahoma State, which was that was
knockdown drag.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of like what you might have expected West Virginia to be. And it didn't take anything out of them.
No.
If anything, maybe it just sort of reinvigorated them. Maybe that was a little bit of a bad game against Oklahoma State. They kind of got out of their system. You hear that. Well, they had a bad one in them. They got it out. Because Oklahoma State's not any good this year. I mean, Colorado beat them yesterday, 52-0, I think it was. So, I mean, Oklahoma State probably shot everything they had against Texas Tech, and Tech wasn't really completely up to their top level. But they got that out of their system, and then they had the epic performance against West Virginia. So it's on to bowl season now, and a season that no reasonable person could complain about. I mean, at the bare minimum, this meets expectations, and I think for the most part, somewhat exceeds most preseason expectations. So, and it's just continuing improvement under Joey McGuire. You're just getting a little bit better each year and each year after that. And so you just, if that continues, then things are going to get really nice.
Yeah, and we'll circle back to the big picture. I agree with what you said though in terms of about I was surprised that Tech beat West Virginia so thoroughly, and like you said, the game was over by halftime. Tech had already rolled up 400 yards and 35 points at halftime, and West Virginia had failed to even get into the red zone. They had the field goal, but it was a 52-yard kick. So, it was a thorough smackdown, despite being held out those first 2 drives of the end zone, which honestly, Mason Tharp, he made that. What's a catch anymore? I don't, why do you have replay? But that's another discussion. But we'll circle back to the big picture. But I think it's long past due for a Tahj Brooks appreciation conversation. I've been a fan of his, and I think ex-Saddle Tramp actually pointed out on the board that, I was a fan of his coming out of high school at Manor High School there in the Austin area. And I was. And he had a really good game late in his true freshman season against West Virginia to seal a victory against West Virginia where he got the ball something like 8 out of 9 plays or something like that and showed a lot of toughness. And it was a precursor of what was to come in that he was a reliable workhorse of a back. And but I didn't foresee back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons like we just saw. I didn't foresee him breaking the all-time Texas Tech rushing record. And, there's my boy Pete Christie has pointed out that several things in terms of Byron Hanspard, like what stats count, what don't, how many years they played, and I think that's relevant. I do, but at the same time, I mean, look, I think it's safe to say Tahj Brooks is one of the best football players to ever play at Texas Tech. And I feel very confident in saying that, and absolutely belongs in the pantheon of all-time great running backs, all-time great players. I'm hopeful that he gets a true opportunity at the next level and can really have a big career in the NFL. But if not, even standing on its own, I mean, he should be in the Hall of Fame, Ring of Honor, all those things, mind you.
Yeah, and probably sooner rather than later. Top and not only is he the leading rusher in school history, he's beginning to put some distance between himself and everybody else with that 188 yards. I
believe it was. 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns, and then his bowl stats.
If he plays in the bowl, though,
I hope he does.
Yeah,
I mean, this if Red Raider through and through. We've heard this. I mean, he's Mr. Durability. I mean, if anything else, I mean, if you're going to define one hallmark of his, it's that he never misses, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't miss a series. He missed the opening game against Washington State. And other than that, I don't recall him missing a game.
Not much.
He's just so durable. And you can run the guy 30-plus times per game, and he's as fresh in the fourth quarter as he was in the first. Maybe fresher than the defense. He starts breaking stuff off in the fourth quarter a lot of times. And so I would hope he plays in the bowl game. I mean, it would be, I think, the fitting way to cap it off for him. I think the chances of him suffering some sort of a serious injury are very remote. But ultimately, that's his decision. But if he does play in that bowl game, I think it's safe to say he's going to add another 100-plus yards because he's had 100 yards or more in every single
game this
season. I think only back among the top something that is done, or maybe in the nation. The only running back in the nation who's rushed over 100 yards for every single game he's participated in. Mr. Reliable, Mr. Durable, fun to watch.
Yeah,
he gets into the open field. It's a bowling ball. You saw some stuff last night against West Virginia where he broke that touchdown off and he did that sharp cut, stumbled the guy, went shooting past him, and then banged into another guy. They went flying at about the 5-yard line, and he managed to get it on in the end zone. That was a great run. So a lot of good memories watching Tahj.
Yeah, and what I always chuckle about, including in his last game at the Jones just yesterday, he always seemed to try and look somebody up. It's almost like he, instead of looking to avoid contact, even in the open field, he was like, zigzag towards defenders so he could stiff arm to the ground or bowl over him or whatever. And and also his versatility, great pass protector, and honestly probably underutilized as a receiver. These last 2 weeks were 2 of his best receiving games of his career that I can remember. And not that, and this is a good segue, not that Texas Tech has had a hard time passing the ball and spreading the ball around, because they also had a 1,000-yard receiver in Josh Kelly. That's somebody who came in from the transfer portal from Washington State, and a lot was expected of him. To me, there was as long as he was healthy, there was no doubt he was going to be Tech's leading receiver, and he was. And that was the first time, and this is really surprising to me, but it does prove how balanced Tech's offense was overall this year, that they had a 1,000-yard receiver and a 1,500-yard rusher at the same time. Those are big numbers, big milestones, and Josh Kelly, 9 catches for 150 yards yesterday, which was emblematic, really, of most of the games he played in. I thought he was great. He did exactly what he was expected to do, and he was just as good as advertised, I feel like, if not better, Josh Kelly this year.
Yeah, that sums it up exactly. I mean, I don't know what more to say. I mean, he was everything you expected him to be. Expected to be Texas Tech's lead receiver, unquestionably was. Caleb Douglas had another good year as well.
Yeah, he did.
And actually may have led Tech in yards per reception.
Yeah.
But it was, Kelly was Mr. Reliable, Mr. Third Down.
Mr. Third Down, yes.
It seems like I heard some statistic about him being the most prolific chain mover among receivers in college football. So there was that as well. And that's another guy that is going to get a look at the NFL level.
Yeah.
I mean, he's you would look at his yards per reception, a little bit over 11 per reception, and you might say, well, he doesn't have a lot of deep speed, but I think he's fast enough.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just an absolute flyer, but he's got enough that I think he can get downfield and do the job in the NFL as well. So I hope he'll get a shot, and I believe he will. And it wouldn't shock me if he made a roster.
No, me neither. And if he found the right fit in terms of, like, I'm thinking of like the Rams right now in terms of where they utilize slot receivers to such a high degree. I mean, he could be very productive at the next level, very elusive, very quick. A lot of his yards are, after the catch. And, I think the NFL is going that way in a lot of ways. Yes, you need those outside receivers to do what they do, but having those guys in the slot, I mean, really going back to Wes Welker,
Yep.
I mean, Danny Amendola, those
Sure.
guys, and the way New England utilize them, it's very valuable. So even if he doesn't get drafted, I think Josh Kelly has a good shot. Let's go to Behren Morton now. Let's stay on offense. Another solid performance. Looking at his stats, 28 of 41 for 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had that one, as we talked about, head-smacking throw where it's like, where did that come from? Everything else was really pretty solid. And I feel like he's played some of his best football here later in the season. Obviously threw for over 400 yards last week, and then if they needed him to play most of the fourth quarter, I think he could have gone over 400 yards again. Just a very good performance, and I think it's worth noting. And this is something that Zach Kitley, offensive coordinator Zach Kitley, told me, was that Morton really likes tempo, and you don't hear a lot of people complaining about tempo down the second half of the season. That's because people don't really tend to brag about, like, oh, that tempo really works. It's just kind of like, oh, that was a good play. You know what I mean? But when it doesn't work, it's like, oh, that's a wasted play. But Tech really kind of, this is a cliche, but kept the foot on the gas and went tempo the last 2 weeks a lot. And, Morton clearly does like tempo. And I think part of it is also teams freaking out about trying to stop Tahj. And then it's like, okay, and then where's Josh Kelly? Where's Josh Kelly? And then Caleb Douglas gets you, or one of the tight ends, or Coy Aiken. And, Morton's kind of, with that tempo, shocking defenses before they can get lined up and adjust with that RPO and play action game. And Tech had a top, 15, 20 offense this year, put up over 50 points the last 2 games of the season, and I think the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, I mean, as long as haste doesn't make waste,
right,
then I have no problem with tempo. But I mean, there have been times we've seen it where we're just, oh my God, because you get a false start.
Right,
that happens so often, or the play looks just like it's disjointed. Guys are not all on the same page, and and the play doesn't do anything.
Right,
it's stopped at the line.
Wasted play. But if it works, and if Behren is at his best when they do that, which seems to be the case late in the season, and they're running that tempo effectively, then shoot, man, how could you complain about it? So that's all fine and good. I think one thing about Behren is that probably in the midpoint of the season, I had thought, I'm wondering if he's hit sort of the plateau for himself. I wonder if he's kind of topped out at what he's capable of doing. And so I was a little bit discouraged about Behren moving forward, but he pushed through that, and he did find an extra gear, or take it to a little bit higher level, and played his best football late in the season. Yeah.
And the numbers bear that out. I mean, he was, for most of the season, he was in the low 130s in passer efficiency, and he's right at 140 right now. Yeah. And in passing efficiency, every single digit actually matters. I mean, there's a big difference between a quarterback with a passer rating of 140 versus 130.
Okay.
I mean, it's clearly a better player who's hitting at 140. So, his numbers have been coming up better and better and better. And, I've said it before, most recently, that he's one of the greatest things about him is just simply the intangible. Toughness.
Yeah. He's a winner.
The gamer aspect of it.
It's true.
You want the ball in Beren's hands late in a close game. So that's something that doesn't show up in the stats necessarily, but it's a very important thing. Fortunately, last night against West Virginia, that didn't even come into play. Hopefully we see a lot more of Behren Morton in the future. And takes it even higher. And now who's to say he's not capable of doing that?
And you and I both were kind of like, hey, let's see what this freshman Will Hammond could do at one point in the season. And I think that was just being honest. Everything I've heard from folks within the program is like the plan is Morton's the guy next year. And that Hammond, that'll be his redshirt freshman year. Then you have 3 years of eligibility left.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time to be a starter. So you have Lloyd Jones coming in. He's going to sign this week. I really like him. He's been playing small football, but put up monster stats, very athletic. But you feel pretty good about it. If you just go ahead and kind of ruffle, say, a Behren Morton's feathers, I'm not saying he's fragile like that or anything like that. I'm just saying hypothetically. And then he's gone. Then your quarterback room looks very different. I think you've seen enough from Behren. He's won enough big games both in Lubbock and on the road to where you feel very good about him still being the guy next year, especially if Zach Kitley returns, which I know some people aren't going to like. But I thought, the balanced offense this season was impressive. It was easily the most balanced Zach Kitley has shown in his young career as offensive coordinator. And, his name's being thrown out there with some head coaching gigs, so you might lose him. Forget getting rid of him. You may not be able to keep him, So, which is funny how that works all of a sudden, right? Mm-hmm. But the hope is you improve the offensive line. Obviously, you're losing Tahj, you're losing Josh Kelly, you're losing some big pieces on your offense, but there's still enough guys who could return, and we'll see what happens with the transfer portal and all that. But they're going to add some guys to the offensive line. McGuire's already gone on record publicly saying that, and if you can keep Kitley. Behren coming back, a couple of nice pieces. I think the offense could be very good again next year with the hope that Tech is still somewhat more balanced, like they have been the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, that's part of Kitley's evolution is that balance. Because, we saw in the early days where it really was, I think, overkill with the passing game a little bit. And, you had Brooks back there. And probably should have gotten more touches. He's carried the ball. Is he the leading
he's got to be
attempts as well?
He's got to be up there.
I think probably so. But he might have had even more. If there had been more balance early on, maybe his sophomore year or something like that. But you have seen definitely that evolution more away from what we think of as sort of the pass-happy air raid into a truly a more balanced offense, and I like that. I think it has paid off. And there's, I have confidence in Jacoby Williams.
Yeah, I really like him, man.
Yeah, and of course Cameron Dickey will be in the picture as well, assuming these guys all return. Right. That's a given now. You have to sort of throw that out there. But if they come back, and I think Jacoby Williams is a very, very talented guy, and you could hopefully see a similar level of balance next year as well.
And then Tech, McGuire also said they want to add a veteran running back too. Yeah. So. He said what you always say, you got to have 4 guys, 4 legit dudes at running back. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I want to give some love to the offensive line. I think they have been one of the weaknesses this year, despite the offense's overall success. There's been some injuries up there. I think there are some critical moments in games where they got beat, and I think the Colorado game, that was a huge, huge mismatch, which is one of the reasons why you're not playing in the Big 12 championship. But they played great in terms of in the finale. Not a lot of false starts, not a lot of penalties. I don't remember Behren Morton really being under much duress. Most of the time, if he did have pressure, it was like he kind of rolled into it, But I thought the offensive line played its best game